If it's fun you desire, it's fun you're going to get at Flat Stick Pub. It doesn't matter what the occasion is, whether it's date night, guys night, ladies night, or large group event, Flat Stick Pub's got you covered. They have 6 great locations across the Pacific Northwest, from Pioneer Square to Kirkland, South Lake Union, Spokane, Bellingham, and Redmond. All locations offer the best pub experience in Washington. 2 rules at Flat Stick Pub: drink local and have fun. Pretty simple. So if you like to have fun, love local beer, and great tasting food, make Flat Stick Pub your next spot. Visit them at flatstickpub.com. And John Canzano joins us right now, johncanzano.com. You can read all of his work there. The Bald-Faced Truth, the radio program down there in beautiful, lovely Portland, Oregon from, 3 to 6 o'clock. He's got you covered there, down there in Portland. You know, you're an old school reporter. I mean, you're still a reporter now, but I mean, that old dogged reporter from when you were younger, covering trade deadline days. You covered baseball back in the day. It's just nothing gets those juices flowing like covering a trade deadline day. Yeah,
I covered the NFL in 2000, 2001. And so, the thing I find interesting is the trade deadline has become more of a edge of your seat national story in all these sports. And I think the NFL is doing a better job this year, because I can remember trade deadlines of the past that kind of came and went and you really didn't know what was going on, but they have created an event that is, I think intentionally placed here on this Tuesday. Well positioned right in the thick of the season. You see the Colts making a move, the Seahawks making a move. These teams are all trying to get a little better. It feels a little bit like the NBA or Major League Baseball at the trade deadline.
Can you envision a time in which college football has a trade deadline?
Ooh, yes. Yes, I can. Because, look, the comment was made to me the other day. I was at the Washington State-Oregon State game on the sideline, and Alex Brink was there at Washington State QB, and we were kind of talking about how the players are perceived, and he was like, these guys are pros. They're making money. And I had a ACC basketball coach reach out to me this week, and he just wanted to vent. He was venting about how guys on his roster maybe are caught up in the money, caught up in they sound and act like pros. Yeah. And he tells them, hey, you guys are professionals. Like, the expectations are there. You're not treated anymore like you're, this is a college kid. Let's give them time to develop. Right. So I could see a system where college football eventually unionizes the players, splits away from the NCAA, creates player contracts, and then creates a collective bargaining agreement that affords for a trade deadline in the middle of the season. I mean, why not? It's already happening. And I called Rob Mullins, the Oregon AD, on this. He came on my show and he kept saying student athlete. He's not alone.
So dumb.
And I said, come on. There, even Dylan Gabriel is like, hey, we're pros, John. We're pros. This is the pros now.
Let's be honest, it's been that way forever. And it's just the student athlete thing is just such a farce, in college sports. Yeah, it's, you see how much it's gone professional already, and I agree with you. And it's interesting, because everything's transactional now, right? Yeah. And no one spends 4 years there anymore, or 3 years, or 2 years, whatever. It's 1 year, and you move on, and it's a different player each year. I mean, there's nothing like this in sports, though, right? Because professional sports, at least they have contracts where you are locked into that. See, I was getting into it today with someone on social media, because you have a platform, you should be pumping up NIL more. I'm like, you know what? It's not my job to do that.
Yeah.
What? I'm not going to tell people how to spend their money. They want to donate, fine. But here's my fundamental issue with the NIL. Fine, you want to pay players and all that. That's great. We've been paying players, if I can spit it out, forever. But I don't know what the deal is. At least in professional sports, I know it's a 3-year contract for X amount. Yeah. In college, I have no idea what it is, John.
Most of these college contracts are 1 year deals. Some of them include incentives for a second year. I've seen a couple of the contracts. They blow your mind, though, because as you read through it, it's not as binding as, ironclad like the NFL contracts, Major League Baseball contracts are, that hold a player in. I think ultimately, if a player wants to go somewhere else and wants to challenge that, I think the program's going to throw their hands up and go, okay, you have to give back what you're contractually obligated to do in the deal. But think about this. A couple things that I found out over the weekend. I was talking with some Washington State high-level donors about John Mateer. Mm-hmm. And remember back in that end of that season, there was a lot of hand wringing in Pullman about, can you go to the coffee company? Can you go to the winery? Can you go to the beer maker and get everybody on board in the Cougar Collective? And I think they did a really nice job, that Cougar Collective, of kind of piecemealing together the best deal that they could possibly get to John Mateer. And I'm told now that the totality of that package was $1.2 million. They came up with 1.2 for Mateer. Then Mateer goes and talks to Oklahoma. Ben Arbuckle's gone. That's his guy. He talks to Oklahoma and he comes back, and the phone call back to the donors, very apologetic, John Mateer says, "Hey, I got a problem here. The package is worth $3.4 million to go to Oklahoma." Yeah. Further, I am told that Bill Belichick and North Carolina got involved and were trying to peel Mateer away from Oklahoma at the same time. He was in this tremendous position of advantage. And so I turned to the donors at Washington State. I said, well, what do you tell Mateer when he calls you and says, "Hey, I appreciate you putting it," because he knows what $1.2 million is to the Cougar Collective.
Sure.
What do you tell him? And they said, "We wish you the best, John." Go get what's yours. Simultaneously on Saturday, Malik Murphy, the former starting quarterback for Oregon State, he got $1.5 million to come to Oregon State. He's benched. The guy starting in his place on Saturday, Jabari Johnson, is getting $50,000, Puck. And you got a real problem if you don't allocate your dollars right in your Oregon State. Like, you got $1.5 million standing on the sideline. People are not happy with that. And everyone goes, "Oh, with their kids." They're not really kids. Mateer's not really a kid when he goes to Oklahoma. He's making $3.4 million, and he's got to produce or they're going to replace him. So the world is changed for these guys. And I do think one day we'll get to a collective bargaining agreement and unionization and all that.
You think about Mateer for a second. He's making double what Jimmy Rogers is making.
Yeah.
And he would have, at Washington State, had they paid him 1.2, would have just been a couple of $100,000 under his head coach.
Yeah.
I mean, think about that, John.
Yeah.
It's just,
you can't stand in the kid's way, right? You can't stand in his way. But the pitch, the pitch they were making to him was, "Hey, Drew Bledsoe, Ryan Leaf,
sure.
They were saying, "Hey, you can be the next Drew Bledsoe and Ryan Leaf. Like, you stay here, you could be that guy. Or you go to Oklahoma, and guess what? If you don't produce, they're going to recruit right over the top of you, and you're going to get lost in there." Now, he has the injury. Maybe he's better off that he went and took the $3.4 million, because we don't know, right? We don't know what happens with John Mateer.
I understand it. I mean, maybe it would have been a difference. Maybe the tugging at the heartstrings about the quarterbacks and all that would have paid off had he been a Northwest guy. But he's a Texas guy, close to the border of Oklahoma. He doesn't care about Drew Bledsoe and those guys.
They told him to get in your truck and drive to Oklahoma. I mean, and with their blessing. I mean, those guys know. And I think that showed, too, that the Washington State donors cared about Mateer, right? They didn't just care that he was there. And I think you go to a lot of schools, and I've talked to some of these collectives, they actually do feel like they're just buying players, right? They're just buying players and putting them in place. So I think, that folksy approach can work to a certain extent, but not when you're up. If Oklahoma's offer had been 1.7, maybe you're in the conversation, but you're not when it's 3.4.
And this is what I will say to anyone that runs these collectives. I think my advice to them would be, if they hired the Puckett crisis firm, and we dip our toes into the NIL world, you and me, John, I would say to anyone, if you're more transparent about who's getting paid, what they're getting paid, what the deal is like, I think you'd have more people that would give money. But when you have no idea who's getting the money, how much is the said person getting, why we're so secretive about what these guys are getting paid, that's what I don't like about it. I don't like that you don't really know where your money is going. And then you bring up the story in Oregon State that you've reported on at johncanzano.com. If I'm a Beaver alum and I've been given all this money, but wait a minute, my money's not really going to the players now. Now it's going to this third party firm that you guys hired. So that's to me the issue that I have with it. If it was on the up and up and everyone could see what I want to know, what Zeviakhaus is getting. I don't want to be told what the rumor is he's getting. I want to know what he's getting. You want to be paid like professionals. Let's, I can go to Spotrac, and I can look at the salaries of everybody in Major League Baseball, everybody in the NFL, everybody in the NBA, College football should stop hiding behind this and make this all public if they want to be treated like professionals.
Yeah, and they don't want to get in. One of the reasons why they don't talk about the money is they don't want the rest of the locker room to know, but I can get to the people. Next week when I come on in this place, I'll tell you what Jedd Fisch is getting. I can get to the people on both sides who are negotiating this deal. You can find the information out, but it just knocked me over when Malik Murphy's on the sideline holding a clipboard and he's getting $1.5 million and your quarterback's getting $50,000. It tells me you've done something wrong from a general manager standpoint, right? You've mismanaged your roster there. You can't have that situation. And I wonder about Trent Bray. Like, is it just possible that whoever was making the GM moves at Oregon State gave too much money to Malik Murphy? Maybe there should have been a pushback there. And could they have invested that money in 3 offensive linemen and just ran the football like crazy? Mm-hmm. I mean, you're going to have to play Moneyball, and you're going to have to, there's a path for you. And the great Ryan Divish, who appears on your show here, told me this one time. I was asking him about the Mariners because the Mariners don't have the same payroll as the Yankees or the Dodgers. And I was asking him about the Mariners. And I say, how do the Mariners get to the World Series, or how do they get to the ALCS and compete? And he said they have a path, but they can't afford a season-ending injury. They can't afford a bad free agent signing. You just have to be a little better. And so I think, Oregon State and Washington State, as they go off into this New World Conference, they're going to have to be really smart and just a little better, because you can't have a guy making $1.5 million standing around on the sideline.
I'm watching that game on Saturday. The guy that should be making $1.5 million is the running back.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever the Hankerson's getting.
Yeah, Anthony
paid.
Hankerson. Yep.
He's a stud.
Yep.
Yeah, he's a real good running back. And well, that was a disaster. How did Rob Akey and Oregon State ruin my Saturday night?
Yeah. Akey's such an interesting character, and Washington State fans may remember him, from their staff. But Akey was on my show, and I said, they had a bye week. They beat Lafayette. And, he came up to me on the sideline before the game, and I said, it's been so long since you lost. Maybe your guys forgot how to lose. Like they had been off for a while. And it was interesting to watch Washington State make the mistakes, because those were the mistakes that Oregon State has made all year. You missed the field goal. You have the special teams miscue. You throw an untimely interception or two. Jedd Fisch, who has been very good, was terrible in this game. And it just kind of broke Oregon State's way. I had picked the Cougs to win that and cover the spread even, because how could you bank on Oregon State in that setting? But there was a real feeling before the game, Puck, that these games, they're important, but what really matters is coming in 2026 for these two schools. There was just a very forward-thinking approach to it. It was almost like, this is cool, but they've got to get in position for what comes next, and that's coming fast.
Yeah, I've tried to, preach patience to the Wazoo fan base. I mean, everybody wants the offensive coordinator fired. There's a group that doesn't like Jimmy Rogers, and they want, I don't know if they want him fired, but they don't like the direction of it. I think a lot of this has to go to the style of play. Cougar fans aren't this is new to them, the way that they play, right? Defense first, kind of not the most exciting offense in the world. I mean, it's been better. It was certainly not on display there on Saturday. I think Cougar fans need to take a step back and understand that this wasn't just, hey, we're going to run the ball more. This is an institutional, philosophical change of how you play football. And I think people need to wrap their heads around that one. I remember when Mike Leach came in 2012. It was ugly. It was ugly football. It took him the entire year to get that offense going. I remember the debut. Everyone was excited. They were on the road in Provo taking on BYU. I think they scored 6 points. It was awful.
Yeah.
Awful. And so pump the brakes for everyone that wants to, throw in the towel, because patience is gone in this sport now. And I think that's the thing that's scary, is that you see these programs now after 2 years, 3 years, we got to move on. And you're like, Jesus, man. I mean, how long does it take to build a real successful college football team?
And you have to think about, what he's building there at Washington State has to be designed to contend with San Diego State, Boise State, Oregon State. So look at the identity. He feels like he can recruit players to Pullman that are going to play that brand of football. And in some ways, they remind me a little bit of, a little bit of Stanford, a little bit of old Oregon State to a certain extent. They're going to want to run the football. They're going to want to run the football and play defense. And And, right now I'm looking at San Diego State and Boise State, and I'm going, okay, that's going to be two schools that I definitely expect to be at the top of the new Pac-12. A lot of questions about the format, by the way. I've done some reporting on this. Like, what are they going to do for 2026? Right now they have 8 football schools. So, and I got a little bit on that, but I think Jimmy Rogers is fine. And I think you have to go back to, hey, they could have beat Mississippi. They could have beat Virginia. You'd be feeling very different. They could have beat Oregon State. You'd be feeling very different with those 3 wins right now if you're a Coug fan. I had them down for 3 wins this season, right? And so I think they're playing with a little bit with house money. Give him some time. Let him get his guys in there. You don't have to be patient. You don't have to give him 3 years, but give him a second season before you start asking for him to be fired.
So what will happen? The schedule is set for 26, but what about 27?
Yeah, 26 is still up in the air, though, from a football perspective. So they're going to play. They're saying there's 3 options right now for 26. Now, I am being told not to expect the schedule for 2026 to be released until maybe about February, maybe even early March. Keep an eye on that. Like, you're going to get it late. Why? Because there's 3 options. Well, option 1 is everybody, there's a 7-game conference schedule because there's 8 teams. Everybody's going to have to go out and find extra non-conference games, right? So Washington State right now has 4 on the books. Oregon State has 3 on the books. So Washington State would need 1 more non-conference game. Oregon State would need 2. There's a cost to that. There's also some question about where do you schedule that, because most of these other conferences start playing their games, in week 4 and 5, right? So where do you put this extra conference, non-conference game if you're the new World Pac-12? So that's option 1, comes with a cost, is a little cumbersome. Option 2 is, could they go out and have a partnership with a conference like the Sun Belt or Conference USA? They have discussed this. Now, would it be an alliance? No. Would it be like a scheduling partnership like the Mountain West? No, no one wants to do that again. But it might be the kind of thing where you just go, hey, our 8 teams are going to cross over and we're going to play the 8 teams in the Sun Belt, and the Sun Belt kindly opens up some windows in like week 5 or 6 of their season to let that happen. That is still on the table and being explored. Third option, what you're seeing right now with Oregon State and Washington State, a home and home between 2 members of the conference. And so they would maybe create some natural rivalries and go, okay, San Diego State is going to play Boise State, Fresno State's going to play Colorado State, Oregon State and Washington State will play a home and home. Now, this could be just a 1-year thing, Puck. I am also told that there's some concern about that because they're going to have a conference championship game at the end, and they don't want a third matchup between 2 teams. Like, TV partner is not going to want to see the third Oregon State, Washington State game, and this one's for the conference championship. So they've talked about, maybe the second game doesn't count in the league standings. Maybe they leave that second date open, and 4 teams in the conference know they have home games. 4 teams know they're going on the road, but they don't know where they're playing. And they do something that no one's ever done before, where they just go, hey, we will set the final week of the season schedule will be set in week 8. And so they'll have a month to know who they're going to play. And so they can kind of look at the matchups and give their television partners the best possible games. There's a little bit of a flex element to that. So this is all still up in the air. I kind of like the idea of crossing over and playing the Sun Belt or the American or somebody. It just gives you a chance to show how deep your conference is, but we'll see where they land. What do you like?
I mean, I would like them to start scheduling, games against the old conference. Yeah. That's what I want.
Okay.
I would like all of them, and maybe specifically those 2 schools, to fill out their non-conference with the schools they used to play.
Stanford, Cal, UCLA. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I would like to see. But
it's hard to get those games, though, with all the conferences going to 9 conference games. Yeah. It leaves fewer windows for non-conference. And by the way, those windows happen to fall in the first 3 weeks of the season. And so you end up with a little bit of a problem. I am being told whatever happens in 26 doesn't necessarily mean that's going to happen in 27. I still think, Puck, they're looking for additional members, either all sports members or football members, but not for 26, for 27 and beyond. I'm still watching UNLV very closely.
Okay. All right. We might have a collision course. Speaking of 2 foes in the Pac-12, now in the Big Ten, we have a collision course at the end of the season. Very realistic that Oregon and Washington don't lose again before they face off at the end of the season. For Washington, again, it's been a season where it's, the fan base has been upset because they haven't been ranked. They're finally ranked now, but they could. And should. They should be 9-2. by the time they face Oregon at home. There is no excuse for them to lose on the road at Wisconsin, Purdue, and UCLA. They're better than all three of those teams. And if they lose one of those, then that's, it's a colossal mistake there on the entire football team if they lose one of those games. So if they do that, though, that's a heck of a football game that they've got, because now if you're Oregon and Dan Lanning, you're like, well, we feel like we're the better football team. Well, boy, do they got that ace up their sleeve, and that ace up their sleeve being that quarterback.
Yeah, and look, there's a chance Oregon could be 9-2 at that point. Let's be real. They're going to Iowa this weekend. Yeah. Oregon's been pushed around at the line of scrimmage the last few games. Iowa's got some big bodies like that. This is an interesting matchup. It's dicey for Oregon. I also think that game plays to Washington's favor. Oregon's not the kind of team that's given Washington problems in the last 2 years. This is not a put a cleat in the turf and push you around the stadium Oregon front seven on defense or offensive line. They are not as physical as Michigan or Ohio State. So I think, if you're a Husky fan, you kind of look at that and go, hey, we got a puncher's chance to win that game and spoil Oregon's season and really validate themselves, because these rankings that are going to come out tonight, I expect Oregon's going to be somewhere around 8 in the rankings. That'd be a huge win for Washington at the end of the year. But Oregon's got Iowa, it's got USC, it's got Minnesota on a Friday night, and then it's got the Huskies waiting at the end.
Yeah, I've heard people say, even if they were to beat Oregon, they'd be 10-2. Would there still be some question marks whether or not they'd be in the top 12? I don't think there'd be any question marks.
No question. They're in.
Zero. They're in if they go 10-2 and knock off Oregon. All right, so I do a show every week on Thursdays with a former coworker of mine, Mitch Levy, Mitch Unfiltered. He a world-renowned podcast. He was a longtime morning show host on KJR. He brought this up to me last week, and I had not thought of it. He was the first person to bring this up. When it comes to Jedd Fisch and all these head coach openings, you haven't really heard his name been thrown out there. He hasn't signed a new deal yet like all these other coaches do because they're being courted, right? Florida's out there. That's his alma mater. UCLA is open. He used to coach there at UCLA. But Mitch brought up something really interesting to me. He goes, he has something that none of these coaches have. I was like, well, what? Well, he could go to Florida, and maybe he's not Florida's first choice. It seems like it's Lane Kiffin and then somebody else. But he could go to Florida or any other one of these programs and say, if you hire me, I'm bringing also one of the leading Heisman Trophy candidates next season.
Mm-hmm.
It's what Arbuckle did last year at Oklahoma. You hire me, I'm bringing you John Mateer.
Yep.
So if you're Florida, you can hire Lane Kiffin or hire who else. But if you hire Jedd Fisch, in all likelihood, you're getting Damon Williams. I mean, it's the new age of coaching hires, right? The package deals.
Yeah, but I'm looking at Jedd Fisch, and I'm thinking for Washington fans, make sure you hydrate, make sure you rest, because I think the Fisch thing is going to drag on. I think he's not going to be the first choice at either one of those schools. He'll be a second choice. And so because of that, I kind of think we're going to be talking about this while Washington is getting ready to play Oregon. Is it a distraction for that game? That is a big question. That could be a real wild card, because we've seen this happen, because right at the end of that game, it could be the day after that Jedd Fisch goes, hey, I've accepted this job. I won't be coaching this team beyond here. So keep an eye on that thing. But I think it's going to drag on. I think it's going to be a question. People have pointed out that, Jedd's family's not living in the Seattle area. Is it more advantageous for him to be in Gainesville or in LA? That could play a factor. He seems like the kind of guy who's been so transient and moved around so much that he would value kind of trying to get somewhere maybe at some point of his life and just stay. Is that Washington? That's a good job. He could win 8 or 9 games there and nobody's calling for his head, right? Like I think it's a great job. You've got the resources. You don't have the expectations. I think the media market there is fairly gentle for the size of the market it is. There's a lot to be said for him staying put, but I kind of think he's going to be on the move. It's just what he's done.
It's what he's always done.
It's Dennis Erickson.
It is Dennis Erickson. Yeah. I do find it fascinating the way that college football is now, that he can use
Yeah.
Now, he'd have to get Damon Williams on his side. I mean, you'd have to agree with him and
It's
go with
Aiden
him.
Childs to Michigan State, man. It's
Right.
John Mateer to Oklahoma. It's
Exactly right.
This has gone on in club sports forever, right? You hire, you get my coach, you get my player. And so this is just club sports with more money. Come on.
You know what? You're exactly right. That's exactly what it is. There's a big game going on in the Big 12 this week. And I've always wondered this, especially in this new age of football with NIL and these collectives. BYU's taking on Texas Tech. Cougars are 8-0. I honestly don't. No one in America can compete with them if they went all in on football, money-wise. No one. I mean, you can go do your own research of how much money that church has and how much money they would be willing to spend. Do we know how much they are, what their NIL, what their collective deal is like? Because I would just think that they could outbid anyone if they wanted to.
I was looking just at their football investment from the university side this year because they were playing a game against Portland State. Portland State's entire athletic department budget is about $5 million. BYU's football budget and their revenue sharing puts them about $65 million just for football. Okay, $65 million. When you throw the collective on top of that, it's evident. These rankings are coming out tonight. BYU is going to be like number 7. Oregon's going to be number 8. You're going to see people talk about Texas Tech. They're going to be at 9. You'll hear talk about SMU as you did last year. SMU's got the Boulevard Collective. Ohio State's going to be 1. Your Indiana's going to be 2. Alabama's going to be 3. Texas A&M's going to be 4. Guess where the spenders are, Puck? There's no outlier in here. There's nobody in there going, hey, we did it for $2 million. Nobody's doing that. Yeah. Closest you have is Memphis, who will get in, be the number 12 spot in the bracket because they're the highest group of 5 school. But it's these are the spenders that are going to get revealed tonight, where the big reveal is BYU's got money. Texas Tech has money. Oregon has money. These are the spenders.
Where if you are a Washington fan, when the rankings come out, where do you expect them to be? Where should they expect to be, and what makes them comfortable and still giving them a shot? And they still very much have a shot.
It doesn't matter because remember last year the first rankings came out. Arizona State was unranked. Clemson was like 23rd. Right. They both got in. This first ranking doesn't matter that much. You just need to win. You can Jedd Fisch going to come out and say we're in control of our destiny, and he's right. Because all they need to do is win games, and they're going to move up, and they'll move into the top 12 if they win out. Granted, the day before that selection release, if you're a 2-loss team, you're going to be a little nervous because you're not going to know where are we playing, who are we playing, are we going to get hosed? Everybody, there's one team that'll probably get hosed. You'll have a little bit of nerves there. But if they win out and they've got to win against Oregon, they're going to get in there, and they'll be in there. But for Washington fans that want to hear their team name announced, just the fact that they'd get announced today, it should be enough. It means you're in the top 25, somewhere in the 20s, probably where they're going to be. You got to think, too, about school like San Diego State. I'm curious to see what the committee will do with San Diego State. Will they be out of the rankings, or will they slip them in there at 25 just to have another group of 5 school in there, Mountain West best team in there, see what happens there. But I expect it to go – it'll be Ohio State, then Indiana. I think there'll be some temptation to put Indiana at 1, but I can't do that yet. I think you'll see Alabama, Texas A&M rounding out the top 4. I think Oregon's going to be at 8. I think it's going to cause a lot of belly aching in Eugene, where they see BYU is going to be at 7. I think BYU is going to be in front of Oregon. And I think that Texas Tech will be right behind Oregon. So it's set up for the winner of this Texas Tech BYU game to kind of move up in the rankings and the loser to move down a little bit, depending on how that goes. So I hear a lot of people in the Big 12 saying they hope that's a great game and it goes overtime, and the committee goes, I need to see both of these teams again. It's going to be a lot of that going on in the next few weeks, but I'll tell you what's going to happen tonight. No one's going to be happy. And the ESPN crew is going to be sitting there saying the SEC got hosed. And the Big Ten is going to be going, oh my gosh, we deserve 4 or 5 teams in here. This is terrible. This is a travesty. Everybody's going to be pissed off.
Well, it's just like the world, John. So we're on good shape.
Nobody.
All right. Follow John Canzano, BFT, JohnCanzano.com radio show starting at 3:00 today with us here every single Tuesday. Again, brought to you by Flat Stick Pub. Thanks, John. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Puck.